folks, welcome to Thursday night's tutorial. Feels like ages since I did the last one. I'll just wait for a few people to come on and then I'll get going. I don't like to start too soon because I don't want people to miss the beginning. I know you can catch up, but sometimes if you're watching it live you don't have the chance to catch up. If you're watching this on the rerun, don't forget to say hello, and I just need a pair of paper scissors, so I'm just going to go and get them while I'm waiting for people to come on. Hi Sandra. I'm back. Oh, I just needed to cut the card and I didn't want to use my other scissors, so I'll do that while I'm waiting for people to come on. Okay, so it is quite a good it's quite a good project, this, because you can use scraps of fabric. You don't need a great deal of fabric for this one. So you can use scraps. It can be quite eco, this one, because we need card, but I'm using the back of cereal boxes. So if you don't have any card in, you can use that. It's ideal because it's not going to be washed, this, so don't worry about that. I'll go through the measurements and then I'll probably put the measurements in the comments as well. So if you do want to make one, you've got the measurements there. I'm probably not going to do a kit for this. You could probably just copy the measurements and you'd be fine for that. So let me just pop it together and put some cards in. Yeah, it is quite cute. I mean, one of my sons, we used to play cards a lot when they were younger, and we used to play blackjack, and there would be times when you would have about, I don't know, 20 cards in your hand. So I wish I'd had it for then. So yeah, it is great. It folds flat. It's quite quick to do as well. We might be on for about half an hour as long as I'm not gabbing too much. Okay, so I'll bring the camera down and we'll get a start. So if you do come on, just say hello and then I can see if you're there. Hopefully I can keep an eye on that as well as we go through. So I'll just put that over there. So first of all, ideally use non-directional fabric for this, just because there's a top and a bottom when you're putting it together, and you don't want to get it mixed up. You don't have to use non-directional fabric. By that I mean, if you look at this, the skull and crossbones are going that way, they're going that way, they're going that way, are any going that way. So it's not necessarily all going one way. Whereas with this one, if you can see all of the mermaid scales are going one way. So it will just help you when you're actually doing it. But don't worry, if you've got it going all one way, just make sure that when you're doing it, you know which side is, when you put the pockets on, you know which side is going to be when you fold it over and the pockets go on. You want your pattern going the right way. But if you do get it wrong, don't worry, because it's not really, it's not a major thing. So we need, let me just get my instructions there. So we need 2 pieces of fabric. Now I'll do this in inches, but I will put it on in centimetres later. The length, we need 15 inches and the width we need 10.5 inches. So the length, if you're looking at it this way, your pattern needs to run this way, not the other way, if you've got a directional pattern. Hi Charlie. And then we need 2 pieces, again 10.5 by 5. Now where's my tape measure? Oh, that's weird, I've just had it. Oh, it's fallen off. There it is. If in doubt, it's always on the floor. Right, okay, so yeah, so you need about 5.5 inches and 10.5 inches going the other way. Let me take that off there so you can see. Yeah, just over 5 inches. 5 inches is plenty because you want it to finish about 2 inches, the actual pockets, so you can see the cards. So if you're 0.5 centimetre or so out, don't worry about that. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me just move that over there so it's not going to fall over, is we're going to make the pockets. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the 2 smaller pieces in half lengthways. Just put a couple of pins in there, so hopefully you'll put pins in yourself. And we've got 2, don't forget. And then I'm going to sew the end up the lengthways. So back tack here, so all the way down and back tack there. Now 1/4 inch seam. No, I think we'll go with 1/2 inch seam because then that will make it around about 2 inches. So yeah, 1/2 inch seam that you need all the way around or all the way down there. So this fabric, I'm using black cotton and I'm using black fabric. The reason why I'm using this is I thought it would go quite nicely with the mermaid scales that I did the other day. So it's kind of like a bit of a piratey theme. They're both in stock if anybody likes the fabric and wants to order. This one is, they're both 100% cotton. They're both, I think they're 150 wide, if not wider. So they're fairly wide fabric. And they're both £7.99, I think. If not, they could be £6.99. So they are lovely, really nice fabrics. So I'm just gonna back tack. In fact, let me put my glasses on a minute. It's gone a bit dark in here actually. I think it's I'm going to just put the light on. That's better. It's been a bit dark all day. It's been a bit wintry all day actually. Okay, so now if you want to measure that seam, or if you work out where your 1/2 inch seam is on your machine, sometimes you have markings here. If you can just about see the markings there. So when the edge of your fabric, let me put it in there so you can see the edge of your fabric, if you line it up with where it says 1/2 inch, then you don't have to mark it all the time. So it gives you a bit of a guide on most machines, even the old ones, I would say, do that. Okay, just take my pin out. I'm going to put it back in my pin cushion like I always do. Now I'm on about a 3.5 stitch glue off the table. Just bear with me, sorry. About a 3.5 inch length of stitch, which I use for most things really. It's not too short or long. It's just a perfect length for every, you know, just generalised things that you're going to make. Okay, do that second one. Now again, if your fabric chews up, do you remember when we said last week? Well, not last week because we did the bee thing last week. The beeswax wraps. So if you put your fabric in and it chews up a little bit here, just start a little bit further in and then come forward and then back tack to the back point there and then come forward. Some fabrics your machine won't like, so rather than worrying about it being chewed up, if you do that, that will help a lot. Now it's started to rain. Okay, and that's that there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a safety pin and turn that through. Try and get a big one, because if you use a big one, it's much easier. So on the seam, I'm just going to poke the pin in. Just close it, and then if you poke your pin in and then just push it through with your thumb, and then use your other fingers to push it through. When it comes through the other end, you can just grab it and pull it over the pin. Do it gently, because sometimes you open the pin. Hi Diane, that's okay, don't worry, you can catch up. Just saying, this is we're just making the channels for the actual pockets first of all. So that's one turn through. I mean, this, you could do this, anything you need to turn through that's a tube, use the pin method. It's so much easier than buying those fancy gadgets that you know you can buy. I wouldn't bother with things like that. Okay, so we need to press those now. Now, ideally, you want that nice and sharp, that edge there. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that in a minute. But also what we're going to do is we're going to press this, the main body as well. So if I turn in the long edge, I'm just going to turn it in 1/2 inch and press that down. So again, it makes it much easier when we turn it through later, rather than turning it through later and sewing. If we press it in place first, it's much easier to work with when we come to the next stage. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can fit this on now. It's quite big, this little ironing board, but it does work. Nice. Okay, now I don't know if you noticed that whenever I do any ironing with fabric, you never know, when you buy fabric, you never know, sometimes the composition you don't know. Instead of putting your iron straight on it, always give your iron a blast of steam first, because it takes the heat out before you put it on your fabric, so you don't burn it. Okay, so I'm just going to get my edge and turn it in 1/2 inch. You can measure that, but after years and years I kind of know 1/2 inch is 1/2 inch. But by all means measure it, because these measurements, although they're quite precise, you can cut your cardboard, so don't worry if your cardboard's too big when you come to pop that in. Okay. I love this fabric, it's quite cool. Okay, so that's those two there. Now, what I'm going to do for this one, what I would normally tell you to do is roll that edge, but because that's, so when I say roll the edge, I mean get it in your fingers and roll it. And what it does is it brings the edge of the seam right to the end. But because it's quite narrow, get it in the middle and try and push the seam to one side, either this way or that way, and then use the tip of your iron. Try not to press this bit. It doesn't matter if you do, but don't worry if you do. But just kind of wiggle it back and forth. And what that does is that flattens that seam, and then when you do this, it makes it much easier to give a crisper edge. Yeah, that's a lovely finish on that now. So just use the tip of your iron. Now that actually wants to go that way. It doesn't matter which way it goes, because it's just the bottom of the seam. I don't know whether you can hear the rain started again. I'm changing my, I've changed one of the bedrooms into an office, and I'm trying to get a bit more room in there for sewing. So at some point I might be up in the bedroom, so you won't hear the rain when it rains next time. Okay, and that's, I think that's all the ironing I'm going to do, but we'll leave the iron on for now. Okay, so now what we need to do, get that there, and that's the back there. We need to attach these now before we actually put, you know, sew it all together. So where's my tape measure? Again on the floor. Okay, so we're going to go round with 1/2 inch seams. We're going to sew round here in a minute, but to attach these, what I'm going to do is we need 1 inch for the velcro at the bottom. If I get this, I can visually show you then. I am a visual person, and I think when you sew, it's much better to have visual instructions than it is on a piece of paper. So if I can show you what I mean. So ignore this one because that's slightly bigger, but the velcro is 1 inch wide. So to get that, where's my end? So we've got 1 inch there, just ignore that extra bit there. I want 1 inch finished on this one, and then I want to place my my pockets, and then we've got 5 inches here where we want to put the first piece of card in. So you've got 5 inches to work with. So I'm actually going to put, we need a 1/2 inch seam, and then we need 1 inch at the bottom. So I'm actually going to just put a pin there, but because this is black, I'm actually going to use a bit of chalk. Just pop that there. Now if you've ever used tailor's chalk before, it's quite useful. It does come off, you just have to rub it a little bit. So if I just use my chalk for there. Now you can see this is quite rounded now. It's quite an old one, this one. but just get your scissors on top of this, it'll catch the dust. Now, not on your sharp side, but on the base of your scissors. Just find it and just kind of on an angle, scrape the edge, and you can repoint it. Just make sure you've got something that's... It's not so bad on something like this, but if you were using it for dressmaking, you want quite a precise edge. So if you can see how thick it was there, when I do the next one, you'll see it's much thinner. And then rather than having a big chunky piece, you can actually scrape it down and get a sharper edge all the way around again. Okay, so I need to place, this is my seam at the bottom here, so I'm going to place that just above the line, because I want to actually make sure that that's got enough room. And also, as you notice, I'm just slightly over on both sides. I much prefer to cut too much than too little. So I'm just going to pin that one in place. And then if I measure from this line here now, the chalk line that I've done up here to 5 inches, you can see the difference in the chalk line there, it's much sharper. So this is the bit where, now you can buy actually pens that fade away, they're like kind of like felt tips, and they fade away when you press them, when you iron them. So they're pretty useful for something like this, but because this is black, I want to be able to see it. So I know now that's going to be my stitch line, which is here in the middle where my card goes in. So if you also, because that then, if you look, it's all about placement this. If you fold it over, it might help. So I want to bring that down a little bit so it sits under the other one, and give myself about 1 inch from the top here. So if I just open that up there, I can pin that into place and just check either side that it's straight. 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 I always work in inches, but work in centimetres if you're more comfortable with that. I will put the measurements on with centimetres in the comments. So all I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take that one off now, so I've got more room to work with, because now that first one is placed. It's better to place the bottom one first, because you want to know that that's in the right position. This one, you've got a little bit of wiggle room. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew round and just attach that. I'm not going to sew anything here, just round in a U shape round the seams. But just let me open that bit there, move that over a little bit. So make sure you do open the bit that you've pressed, because that needs to be flat. Okay, so just sew round it. You can back tack it if you want, but it's not necessary, because we're actually going to sandwich that into the other side of the fabric. We're going to close it all in together. So if you don't want to, or if you forget to back tack it, don't worry. You can use a big stitch for this as well if you want. Now when you come across the bottom here, try and go as close to the edge as you can, just so it looks neat, but also you don't want to encroach too much on the space where your cards are going. Okay. If you're not going to back tack, just sew a little bit further up when you come off. So there's my end there, and I've sewn to there, just so it doesn't come undone while you're working with it. Okay, so I'm going to place, oh, that's right, no, I thought I'd done the bottom one too high then, but I'm putting the bottom one on, ignore me. I think because it's quite dark as well, hopefully you can see this, but because it's quite dark, hi Vicky, love the rain sound, I know, you can hear it on the conservatory. I just make sure that you put the seam part down, and I'm going to put that not quite on the line, just slightly above it. So now that's nice and level, and then I'm just going to stitch that as well. Now if you want, you can start again at the top here and just go straight the way around again. It'll just secure that other one a little bit more. I mean, it's only for cards, it's not really a structural garment or anything, but you know what kids are like, they are quite rough at times. Now these, they're not just for kids these. Anybody who's got any mobility problems with their hands, anyone with arthritis, anything like that, these are cracking for people. So yeah, it is quite a nice little idea. And you could theme them, you know, everyone can have a different one, or you could do a whole set for the family. I just think, great little thing. And if you're camping, you always play cards when you're camping. Okay, so that's that. It's nice and simple. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to sandwich this bottom piece. Now see what I did there? I just popped that on top without worrying which was the top and which was the bottom. So that's when you get a non-directional fabric, that's the beauty of it really. You don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to pin that into position so it doesn't move. Just on all the corners. Oh, let me get some pins. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way around and leave the side that I've pressed open, so when we turn it through we can actually put the card in from there. So again, from this side you do need to back tack here, so back tack all the way to the corner, needle down, foot up, 45 degrees around to this side and the same to this side, and back tack at the end. 1/2 inch seam on this as well. If your seams are out slightly, don't worry too much, because if the cardboard is slightly too big, you can just cut the cardboard to fit when we actually put the card in. And as long as the Velcro works and touches each other, then that's fine as well. Let's pop those 2 pins. I always put my pins back in my pin cushion, just so when you walk around you don't stand on them, or if you've got pets or kids, they don't stand on them. So come to that edge, needle down, foot up, turn it 45 degrees, down again, carry on sewing to the end. Take that pin out. Try not to sew over your pins if you can help it. Try and get into the habit of taking them out. If you do need the pin in, just be very careful and make sure that when you're sewing over your pins are horizontal, not vertical. So make sure that when you're sewing, so I'm sewing down this way, make sure your pins are in this way, not this way or this way, because you've got less of a chance of breaking the needle that way. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this through. So if you remember, put my thumb into the corner, use this finger to turn it, and then this finger to turn it, then this finger to hold it and poke it through. You can just cut the corner off once, and then just poke it through, and then get your expensive poking tool, knitting needle, and then just poke it through. Gently, don't be too rough with it. Both, you get quite a nice finish with both of them. Okay, so actually I am going to press this again now, so I'm glad I left the iron on. Just stand up so I can see what I'm doing. So just make sure you pull the you don't want that to roll underneath the bottom one. You want this stitch line to be right on the edge. So again, just roll it in your fingers and it will come to the edge. Now, if you press as you go, it makes such a big difference when you're making something, especially garments. It gives it that professional finish. Makes it easier as well to sew as you are pressing as you go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to repress this bit here, because obviously I've got this on here now, so that's going to be quite chunky. So you've already got your press line. If I turn it through actually and then turn that over, just follow your press line and just press those pockets down before you do that, because that will make it easier to press. Okay. Just turn it in. Make sure it's level from underneath as well. Press that. That's come out slightly there, so I'm just going to roll that in. Just take a little bit of time here and make sure that you've got it nice and neat. Because even though they're mainly for kids, these, it is nice to finish it nicely. There we go. Yep, happy with that. Now I think we've finished with the iron actually. Okay, so all we need to do now, again on the floor, is we just need to make sure that we have, where is my other one so I can show you. Okay, so if you look at this side where the pockets are, you've got your Velcro just here, then you've got a pocket, we've got the stitch line there, we'll have another stitch line here, and then a stitch line for the Velcro at the bottom, but also a thinner piece. So if I place these on here, give you an idea of where it's all going to sit. There, like that. So if I measure first of all, because we can trim these, so don't worry about that. Okay, so we need another 5 inches from the, so we've gone 1 inch to here, then from this point to here is 5 inches, then from there to here is 5 inches. And then 2 inches, which will leave you about 1 inch at the end. If it's slightly wider, don't worry. You may struggle if it's slightly narrower. You might want to go back and unpick it, because obviously your Velcro is about 1 inch wide. So you want to be able to make sure that that fits on there. Let me just pull this table back a bit. There we go, that's better. Yeah, so you're better to have slightly too much at the end where your Velcro goes. Okay, so if I use my ruler and I'm just gonna mark that so I know where my stitch line is going to be. Now I think for something like this, I know before we've used pins, but I think something like this is much better. So now we know where, yeah, we know where that's going to be, the stitch line. Now, as well as stitching on these, we need to go over this seam again here. Now let me think. Yeah, I'm going to stitch that there because I don't want the cardboard to go underneath. So all I'm going to do now is back tack on the top and the bottom, and obviously we're going to leave this open because that's where we're going to put our cardboard in. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitch lines to sew up, but it's just a straight stitch, and you can use a big stitch on this. If you want to go up to a 4, you'll be okay, because this is just keeping the card in place really. Now because you've got your white chalk mark, it's giving you a really lovely straight line to stitch on, so that will help a lot. Okay, if I go under again, now try and make sure that you get on spot on your lines. If you don't worry, you can always trim down your cardboard, but you don't want to trim it down too much because it's actually structural, you know, to help structurally for it to stand up. Okay, that's those. Next one. The more you make of these as well, if you're making this for your whole family, because even if you can hold on to your cards, it's quite good fun to have them all, and then no one can see what you're playing with. Now I'm going to go, rather than struggle with all my fabric on this side, I'm going to turn this round now. So most of my fabric's on this side to do this last one. Now this is quite thick. You don't have to stitch on this line here. You can stitch next to it if you want. If you feel like your machine isn't going to go through all those thicknesses, but just take your time going through. And just all we're doing there is securing that so the cardboard doesn't go through. Okay, and we're almost finished actually. What we've got to do now, trim off those cottons. Now your chalk marks, you can obviously still see them now, but it is only chalk. So if you get another piece of the fabric that you've got and you just rub over it with it, that brings the majority off, and then over time that will come off as well anyway. So just rub it against itself, and see that's pretty much gone actually, and it hasn't marked it too much, so it's actually a good little tip as well. Just going to trim those cottons off. Oh god, it's gone really dark again. The sky is black over there. Right, okay, so all we're going to do now is put our card in. So first of all I'm going to pop the small one in and just going to see. Now I can already see that's slightly too big, so I'm just going to trim it down. Just start with a little tiny bit. You don't need to take too much off. Just ever so tiny, just a slither to begin with, just to see if it will go in. A little bit more. So if you have gone over your stitching ever so slightly, just trim it down. And I'm going to check at this point as well. I'm going to trim that a little bit over because we need to stitch this end up here, so I don't want to straighten that off a bit. I don't want to sew over the cardboard, so just pop that in. It's a little bit snug, but it will go in. It's better to be a little bit tight because it will give it more support. Try not to bend it as well. Now it is stuck there on that side. Come on, you want to go through? I'm actually going to trim that a little bit more rather than fight with it. So if it's not going to go through, just trim it a little bit more. Just be careful you don't trim down too much. See, it should really slide in as easy as that. No, it's actually, I can feel it catching on there for some reason. I don't know why. So if it is catching on it, just take your time pushing it through. It should slide in really easy. I think maybe one of my stitches is poking down a little bit. There we go, that's it. Now it should be easier than that, so don't struggle with it. Okay, I'm just going to trim that end a bit more. So see, you just play with it a little bit just to get it in. There we go, and just feel, I can bend that over there, so that's plenty enough room for my sewing the edge over later. Now I'm just going to check with this one, I'm going to trim that one down slightly as well. Don't use your fabric scissors to cut your cardboard. As I said before, this is just, I've used cereal boxes for this, which is quite good. But just if you've got cardboard, this one's a bit easier to go through. I think it's because it's bigger. Yeah, check there's enough room there. And trim this one down as well. So I think you can agree, they are simple to make. and don't take too long to make. Pop that one in as well. This one's struggling slightly as well, but I think that's because, let's take that back out again and trim that. Just looking at that, that's actually not straight, that's why you can see that that is slightly shaped slightly there. Okay. So yeah, so if you follow the measurements, especially for the cardboard, and then just trim it as you need to, slither at a time, so you know that it's going to fit, because you don't want to be cutting out too much, too many pieces of cardboard again and again. Okay, so that is that. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew this edge up here and then attach the Velcro. Now, if you want to attach the Velcro before you put your card in, you can do. But just make sure that all your card is fitted well before you put your Velcro on and you sew your ends up. So I'm going to put, it doesn't matter which end you put your soft or your hook or your close on from your Velcro. You can put, I'm going to put the soft bit. Just going to measure that and cut that off. And the same with that. So I know I've got enough and not too much. First of all, I'm going to just close the end up first, and then I know that that cardboard is not going anywhere. So just at the end where we've left open, make sure push your cardboard in. You don't want to sew over that. And right on the end, back tack here and sew all the way down to the bottom and back tack at the end. So each piece of cardboard, just push in and make sure that it's all the way in. I mean, you won't break a needle, but it'll just be tough to sew over. Just push that in there. Push the next one in. Okay, so to make it, to have the Velcro so when you fold it up, it sits properly. On the side where the pockets are, on the bottom there, it doesn't matter whether you use the hook or the close, the touch or the close bit, just put your Velcro on that side, and then the other piece of Velcro, you need to turn it over and then sew the other piece of Velcro onto that side. So you're not putting them both on this side. You turn it over, that one goes here. So I'm going to sew that one down first. Now it's always harder to pin the rougher side, so just make sure your pins are nice and sharp. Now on your Velcro, you've got the Velcro's in the middle, the hard bit, and then you've got a tiny bit of flat. Try and sew on that if you can. Don't worry if you go over, it just makes it easier to sew when you're doing Velcro, because it is quite tough, this bit. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to back tack here, sew it all the way down to the bottom on both sides, just to hold that down onto that piece of fabric there. Now you might find as you're sewing it pushes, so keep your fingers on it so it doesn't move. If you've never sewn Velcro before, it's fine to sew, it's not a problem, but it just kind of have a mind of its own. The soft part of it's not too bad, but the rough bit, sometimes the pressure of your machine foot, your presser foot, pushes that. So try and keep hold of it if you can. And when you're back tacking, just take it slow. Now I've just sewn a bit slightly over and it's gone through okay. So if it goes through on my machine, it'll go through on your machine well. Just going to cut those edges off. Okay, and again, we've turned it over. I'm going to do the soft bit now. Don't forget to back tack, because obviously when kids are opening this and closing it, you want to make sure that it's well secured. Again, just it's thick on that part. You've got all your corners and you've got your velcro that you're sewing through there, so just take your time back tacking. Let's just prevent breaking a needle. Take your time, back tack. So I've sewn that bit on the edge, still loose, flappy, so I'm going to sew that bit there. You probably would, I'm not sure, you probably need slightly a bit more than a fat quarter for this actually, because you've got your channels, these little pockets, so a fat quarter, you'd probably get 2 out of ½ metre, I would say. You definitely get 2 out of ½ metre of this because it's very wide, but if you're using 44 inch wide fabric, about a 112 or a 114 centimetre, then you'll get 2 out of ½ metre. And then all you do is do it that way. So you put your velcro on, and that is that. Perfect. You just put your cards in. Now you don't need, if you haven't got a lot of velcro, you could sew a piece of velcro on that side and that side. You don't need a whole strip right across. Oh, hi Erica. Yeah, that's fine. Just watch it on catch up. It's quite an easy one this. I'm not sure what time are we at now. Yeah, it's 1/4 past, so it's about, with me yapping, it's been about 40 minutes. And there you go. You just put your cards in there and off you go. So this is kind of like I say, the bit of a mermaid and a bit of a theme when it comes to mermaids and pirates, which I think is quite cute. But yeah, and that is it. Very, very simple. You do fold flat, so if you're going camping, you can just open it up. And if you turn that over, it doesn't quite just meet there, but you could make a couple of bags to pop everything in and your cards, so you've got it all together, which I think is a good idea. I'm going to do, let me just pop this up. I'm going to do a drawstring bag at some point, so you'll be able to adapt that to a lot of things, a lot of the tutorials that I do. So I hope that was useful. I hope you enjoyed that. Nice little project and great for kids. I am going to be making these and selling them in the studio, so if anybody does want one, let me know. You can choose your fabrics, there's hundreds of fabrics, so have a little look and see what you fancy. And yeah, that's it. So I shall be back on next week. That's cute, Sandra. Where did you find those emojis? I'll be back on next week. I'm just working through a few things for the tutorial for next week. Yeah, something a bit useful. But I'll put an event thing on, so you can add on to that and watch it. But yeah, as I said, I mean, even that amount of Velcro, all you need to do, because it's only light and you've only got the cards to go in it, it's just to hold it together. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. If you're watching it on catch up, leave me a comment if you like it. And I shall see you next week. So have a good weekend and yeah, good week. Take care. Bye.